good evening, and welcome to another episode of A Journey in Boots from Trauma to Triumph. I'm super excited because tonight we have the very first female captain on our show tonight. And before we get to that, Dr. J, is there any new news in your world today before we bring on our amazing guest?
Any new news?
Yeah, any new news?
No.
No new news?
Supposed to be?
No, I'm just asking.
Oh,
It's
no.
I just
I'm
figured we
super
started off
excited about
different.
our show.
I know, me too. So should we just bring her on and then you can introduce her? All right, perfect. Let's do that. There we go. Welcome to the show, Captain Rhone.
I wanted to hear the news.
I don't know what maybe she's coming to visit. Is that what the news is? You're coming to our country or what?
Well, there is that. No, but I just wondered if there was any new news in the practice or anything like that, or I don't know. I didn't prep her ahead of time to ask that question, so I just wasn't sure if there was any new news.
Practitioners, we are now licensed in Texas, so
that's new news.
Yes, it's very exciting. I did have somebody ask me if we needed help. One of my practitioners asked me if we needed help with the podcast today. I said, I think we got this. Maybe not. Maybe we'll bring him on a little later. Who knows?
Who is it, first of all?
Norman.
Oh, well, Norm's always welcome.
I'll let him know. He might have had a lull in his calendar today, considering the man works 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. So when he does have a break, it's like, whoa, slow down. But
do I still get to meet him this weekend?
Yes, we'll meet him Saturday. I will make sure. Cool. Yes, I'm trying to coordinate.
I love it. It's funny because I get to see all these people. I've been friends with you guys for 3 years, and I finally get to see you in real life.
That's what happens when you come to the country.
I know.
I mean, like States. USA, not necessarily the country. I don't live in the country. I live in Florida. Okay, just to clarify.
So you've never met in person?
No.
Wow.
I know. I'm so excited.
I know. I'm excited.
It's going to be cool.
I'm truly excited. It's yeah.
Is she going to meet your horses?
I might drag her out there. It depends.
Okay. That's the country.
Amazon hit my car and I had to, Amazon driver hit my car and it's been a whole feat of rental cars and collision owner vehicles that I've had to endure because they want to get it right, so it's been a challenge, but we're getting there. I don't know. She might, maybe on Sunday I'll drag her up there. I haven't decided yet. We'll see.
I haven't been on a horse since I was a little girl, or been around horses since I was a little girl.
Oh, these guys are awesome. I send my clients out there pretty regularly because they do reset the whole equilibrium. It's an amazing experience. If you're highly emotional or have excessive anxiety, go walk up and pet a horse for a half an hour and you'll feel 100% better.
Perfect.
And I do have a place. I do have a place in Virginia too, Captain. So I always call her Michelle. So it's weird to call her Captain. It is just, they basically, they don't speak our language. So they have to, in order for us to be directive with them when we're riding them, we have to move our bodies in the same way that they move, and we have to use our hips a lot to get them to navigate and go where we want them to go. So we don't speak their language. So they kind of navigate us emotionally. So just walking up to a horse and loving on them, petting them, scratching their nose, whatever, it resets you because they absorb your anxiety. They absorb whatever and they process it for you. It's just an unbelievable experience. I don't think there's anything equal. I really don't. So if you get an opportunity to go visit a horse farm or, especially people with quiet horses, where I'm talking about is, Spirit Equine Therapy in Webster, Florida. And they have 10 horses and it's just, they have a nonprofit and a for-profit. So civilians can come out there. Of course, there's a fee because, I mean, he's the only nonprofit I know that costs money every single day.
Mm.
Because you have to pay to feed the horses a couple times a day and, house them and everything. But what he does is he has a nonprofit and he gets funds so that he can serve those who serve the community or the country. So he'll take you out there for 2 or 3 hours and you run in the round pen and then you get the feel of the horse. And it's just, you can even do mounted shooting. It's pretty amazing. But he'll be on our podcast in a couple of weeks. So he'll have an opportunity to speak of what he does, which will be very cool. So you got to stay tuned for him.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to check it out.
So back to you, ma'am. Let's talk about how you became a police officer.
Oh, man. Well, I guess I'll age myself just a little bit. Murder, She Wrote, and Matlock were some of my parents' favorite shows, and therefore that's what was on the TV when I was growing up. And
very good show, though.
Such good shows. Angela Lansbury, I mean, she did it first, right? She paved the way for the rest of us. So I just really, I don't know. It's strange to say the TV show was inspirational, and I don't necessarily think it was I wanted to be a murder mystery writer and also solve crime on the side, or even I think I've toyed with the idea of being an attorney several times in my life.
That makes sense. Yeah. I can totally see you as wow. Yeah, I see that.
But by the time I graduated and would have gone on to law school, I had already been policing for a while, and I guess I kind of got sucked in, and I guess I'm still sucked in because here I am. So 22 years later, I'm still here. I originally went to school to do journalism, actually. So I wanted to be a news anchor. I wanted to do investigative journalism and investigate and then report back. But I really was moved and inspired by 9/11 and everything that happened, the patriotism and the servitude that came out of 9/11. I also come from a long line of firefighters. So the obvious choice to me was policing, just to toy with them a little bit. So that was fun. My mom said, are you sure you don't just want to be a firefighter? And I said, yeah, I'm sure, Mom, I'm gonna be a cop. And I grew up in a small town in Virginia, and she said, well, you could be a cop there. And I said, no, it's small. That would be boring. And she said, boring is good.
Boring keeps you safe.
I don't
Every mom's worst nightmare. I'm sure.
Right. And she said, well, I thought I was done with all this when your dad retired from the fire department, but I guess I'm not. I'll just pray for your safety every night like I did him. And I'll just know news is good news. But every time something bad would happen in Hampton, something that I knew was going to make the news, especially if it was an officer getting hurt or, officer involved shooting or something like that, I would text or call. Often I was still like on scene, I'm in the car, just sending a message like I'm okay, just so that she could go to bed. Cause I knew she wouldn't sleep well. I'm an only child. So not that you don't like worry about your kids equally, but I love them all the same. But I just knew that she wouldn't sleep. That was just how she was. So I would text her, just let her know that that I was okay. And so I kind of got in that habit right out of the gate. And now I don't have as much police excitement in my life, unfortunately. And my dad doesn't really text. So I guess.
Well, that's what happens when you're in charge. It slows down a little bit, less patrol. So how did your journey go from like being on patrol right out the academy? Were there any exciting events? Like how was I know in policing, you have to go through the steps of promotion. What does that look like for you? Or what did that look like for you?
So policing has always been exciting for me. It still is. The job itself is amazing. I love police work. And so I loved it, and I loved it immediately. And I was a handful of females. You know, there's still a handful of women in this job. And so when you are one of a few and departments are looking to build, you know, teams or special units, they often want to make them diverse. And so I always seemed to be the female that ended up on the special unit, or I was in our narcotics unit for a while on bike patrol doing narcotics interdiction on bicycles. I was a bicycle officer. And I was in our business district, which is also a bike district. So we would patrol our hotels and our nightclubs and do interdiction in the hotels. And so I had a lot of fun doing that for 9 years. So I waited 9 years to promote, which nowadays is a long time. Most officers go up within 5. And I don't know, there's varying opinions on whether they should or not. I think it really just depends on the candidate. I mean, you can't say with any amount of certainty that no one's good before X amount of years, because there's always that one that is. So, but I waited.
Was it your choice to wait?
Yes.
Because you loved what you were doing?
Yes.
You would be amazed at how many officers that I deal with on a daily that are like, no, I'm good as this. I'm good as that. I don't want to move because they're going to shift me into a different department and I don't want that.
And I wanted that. So I've had a very diverse career. I don't like to sit still. You know that. You're my co-reporter. Like, you know that about me. I hate to sit still. So I don't want to be in one place for a long time. So I mean, you know, a lot of the special units sort of were pieces and parts of patrol. They were pulled from patrol, but, you know, I did patrol for several years, and then I went to a high impact robbery detail every, you know, holiday season and during the summertime. Then there was a bike detail during the summertime doing, you know, high crime stuff. So I got pulled into a lot of different specialties, and then the business district, and then our special investigations, which technically falls under investigation. So I did that. And so I was doing different things in patrol, and I was moving around, and I was enjoying myself. And I knew that leadership was a goal. That was always the goal of mine. But I also knew that I would feel when I was ready for that. I would know when it was time to take the step towards leadership. And I did it after 9 years, and I was promoted immediately right off the first list that came out. And I actually was our Fort Monroe liaison for the city and the police department. So Fort Monroe was an Army base in Hampton, and it was on the BRAC list. So it was decommissioned back in 2011.
Oh, wow.
And
I didn't know that.
It was closed. So it's no longer an Army base, but at that time, part of it was still owned by the Army. And then there was a part of it that was taken on by the National Park Service. Mm-hmm. And then there was another part of it that was owned by the state, which is run by like an entity of the state of Virginia. So there's a director out there. And then pieces of it belong to the city of Hampton. And so I was put out there to sort of work with those different liaisons and help that piece of property transition over, and what enforcement would look like, where we could enforce, where we couldn't, what we needed to be able to enforce, because Army signage doesn't look anything like state or city signage. So it was really interesting. It was a great opportunity, and I met a lot of really cool people. So I liked that a lot. I went to investigations. I went to records. Recruiting.
What's records?
So
we're going to break this stuff down for our listeners because not everybody understands police lingo.
Okay, so the records unit are the people that process all of the paperwork that comes into the police department. So every ticket, every report, every warrant, every protective order. I signed off on concealed weapon permits that were going to go over to the circuit court. So all of the like administrative paperwork that, you know, would be available potentially to a citizen if they wanted to come in and get a copy of the report. So that was my first, I was a sergeant. I was promoted to sergeant. I was pregnant at the time. So there were, you know, only a few places that they could safely put me.
Right.
But it was interesting. And I grew a lot, I think, as a leader there because I supervised our civilian employees. Mm-hmm. So I had 20 civilians, and I had just come straight out of investigations. And a bad day in investigations looks completely different than a bad day in the records unit.
Yeah.
And I really had to adjust my approach to leadership and my employees and my mindset, because us running out of toner was like, I just could not wrap my head around why that was a big deal. And the employees were like devastated that we'd run out of toner in the printer. And I'm like, y'all, people are dying. Like, let's calm down and take a step. It's going to be okay. And then this happened day after day. And I thought, I'm going to destroy my relationship with these people if I don't figure out how to be effective here and communicate. And so I just learned to frame it in that they took a lot of pride in their work. And, you know, no toner means at the time we printed everything. This was in 2014. So, 10 years ago. But if you think about that through technology, that's a long time. And everything was getting printed, and like they're scanning stuff and fax machines. And, if you don't have toner in those things, you can't do your job. And so I sort of just learned to reframe it that way, that this was their emergency and it was important to them. And I needed to pay a little bit of attention. And once I looked at it that way, I was like, all right, well, we can get
traumas are not comparable. We've learned this. Yes.
That's right. So I left there and went to personnel and recruiting and served as the hiring manager, I suppose. So that really opened my door to human resource processes and things you can do at work and things you can't and things you should and things you shouldn't. And just sort of the whole hiring process for all of our employees. So it wasn't just sworn officers, it was civilian employees too. So we were recruiting for every position, dispatchers and records employees and crossing guards. I mean, every position that we had. So that was really cool. It was me and another female. Actually, we were all women except for my lieutenant at the time, who was a man, but we were all women. And it was a lot of fun. We got along really well. If we fussed with each other, we were over it in 10 minutes. It was great. We had a blast. We fully staffed the police department, which I think is one of the proudest moments of my career. You don't hear that very often. Yeah, it was really cool. It was a great assignment. And then I got the itch and I went back out on patrol because I needed to police again.
You needed to get back on that bike.
I tried. So
you did.
My lieutenant wouldn't let me. He was like, nope, you can't run the scene if you're on a bicycle. And I said, I can bike there. I can get there. He didn't buy it. So I wasn't on a bike, but I was on the night shift and that was really cool. That was amazing. It was great.
What's your favorite story from night shift?
Oh my gosh.
I know you have several, but just give us the highlights.
So this is kind of a funny story. I'll tell you, it's funny. So we had this gentleman who called in all the time and he was highly mentally disturbed. He had a lot of mental health problems and he was the sweetest man when he was sober. But as we know, they co-occur. So he was also a raging alcoholic. Mm-hmm. And he called us when he got drunk. Sometimes he wanted to talk. Sometimes he was like barricaded in his house with knives, just sort of rambling about things that didn't make a bunch of sense. So he had some roommates and he was really like causing a ruckus this night. So he called in and at first I was like, there's no one's in danger. We're not going out, because every time we went out there was a use of force. Like he would call, he would do something, he would display behavior that caused us to have to take him into custody for an emergency custody order to be evaluated mentally. Mm-hmm. Or he would be a danger to himself because he was so highly intoxicated that his thoughts weren't rational. And he fought every time because he was under the influence. And so to try and minimize these, us having to use force on this guy, was like, we're just not going to go. I mean, nobody's in danger. There's right. No law enforcement thing that needs to occur. Well, he amped it up. The roommates called and they were like, no, like it's bad. You got to come out. So we went out there. The roommates came out and he was behind the glass screen door. Well, the glass, door, and the main door was open, and he just wouldn't come out, and he had a knife, and our options were really limited. So we had some officers that had generated a really good rapport with him, and they were talking to him through this glass door from the front yard. So the corporal and we said, all right, well, we're going to go in the house and we're going to take him. We'll have to tase him. It's the safest way. He's armed, but we don't want to shoot him, but we got to tase him. So, the corporal had the taser coverage. I had the lethal coverage in case he turned around or charged at us or anything. And we kind of snuck in through the garage, gave him the command to drop the knife. He turned, he didn't. So we tased him. We took him into custody. Anyway, all was well. Well, we go back to review the body camera footage. And when we were entering the house, there was this really awesome heavy metal song that was playing from the back bedroom. And so the whole scene ended up looking like something that you would see on like a recruiting video or some like Blue Bloods or a police show. And I ended up downloading the song on my phone and would like play it on my way into work. And we just sort of had this laugh, like we couldn't have made this any more theatrical than it already was. Then there's heavy metal playing in the background. So, I mean, but those are the things that make the job fun. Like if you don't laugh at the things like that, not, in the guy's face, but we have to review the body camera footage. We had to do a use of force report. So obviously we all had to look at this footage over and over and over again. And that music playing was just like, all right, well, yep. And I think I said something really cheesy in the garage. I was like, let's do this. I mean, it was really, it was just, the things you say, and then you have to watch yourself on camera and you're like, oh God, that's so cringy. What was I thinking? But, it was funny, but we had a lot of fun on night shift. It was a good time.
Well, as serious as your job is, and I mean, it is life and death all the time. You got to have fun.
You do.
You just have to.
And we knew when to have fun and when to get serious. And that was obviously in the moment. It was a very serious moment, but after the fact, in the safety of the office, when you're watching camera footage, there were a lot of funny. I mean, there's probably a blooper reel out there of the funny things that happen on all police body cameras, because like sometimes you don't realize it's still on, and like you say things, we talked to ourselves in the car. I think I caught myself singing one time. I was like, oh God. It's a good thing I'm a terrible singer too. It was horrible. I was like, oh, I hope nobody subpoenas this or does a Freedom of Information Act request, and they're going to be really sorry if they have to listen to this.
So when you went from sergeant to lieutenant, what was that process like? Because I know that's even more tough. I have some female police officers that I have counseled, and it is a very challenging process.
We use an assessment center, which is pretty common now in policing. So it's an outside company that agencies will hire to run their promotional process. I like it that way. I think it really removes a lot of the bias that you have, intentional and unintentional, from having people within promote people within. So we always use that. So there was an assessment center. I will tell you, it was the most challenging assessment center that I've ever had. I think it was even tougher than captain, honestly. I don't know really what made it harder. I think sometimes you just get those questions and you're like, where did this come from? Like, who made this up? But switching from almost immediate supervisor, really the sergeant in any agency has the most impact on the morale, the day-to-day operation of their shift or their unit. If you examine the personality of a unit, almost always it will mirror or reflect that of their sergeant. It's fascinating.
Mhm.
I've done it in a lot of different agencies. I've done it in my own. It's really interesting. So, the sergeant just has the most influence and the most touch on those officers every single day. The lieutenant is it's a lot farther removed than you would imagine. One step feels more like three. I don't remember really seeing my lieutenant when I was an officer on the street. Like, I had a female lieutenant. She was amazing. She was a role model, a mentor. I never knew if she was even at work. I mean, I knew she worked, but I never
She had
saw
meetings.
her. Right. Like, I mean, at that time, they didn't mark up on the radio. They would show up when things went really bad, and that was about it. The lieutenants now show up to a lot more and are a lot more present just because we
Right.
know that that's effective in leadership. It's just effective to show support from that level of command.
Well, as a patrol officer, it's hard to aspire to someone you never see.
Right. And it also makes officers feel more supported when you show up. So I went from night shift sergeant to briefly a day shift sergeant, and then I was promoted and I went to our training academy. So I went to an administrative position, and then I went to night shift as a lieutenant. And when I was a night shift lieutenant, I went to lineup every night because, well, I liked lineup, but also, it was important. I wanted the officers that were coming in and busting their tails for 12 hours to know that I supported them. And I wanted to be available to them to ask questions or to air grievances. And I would show up on calls mostly because I didn't want to be bored, but and it was never to micromanage. And I made that very clear. I would tell them, like, I'm going to show up on your calls, and it's not because I don't trust you. You do amazing, but I have to be here all night too. And at some point at 3 a.m., my eyes start to cross in front of the computer, and I'm done with my admin work. And I just want to be out here doing what you do. And so I would. But yeah, I think it's really important to show up and just be available and supportive for them.
Effective
Well, I
leadership.
met you with your teams, so I've taught it in both. I think both of your teams, right? So at least two, because I know you probably have 17, but at least two of them I've had the honor of teaching, and I will tell you that her team is very relaxed and very genuine and authentic. Like, they don't look at. There are a lot of people in higher levels where they look at them a little bit differently, like they're out of touch, and you definitely don't have that persona, which is very cool. No, you're welcome.
I work really hard not to. I don't ever want to be out of touch. Everybody talks about the us versus them that tends to occur between command staff and, the troops, if you will, or the officers, whatever you want to call them. Mm-hmm. And I think that happens because leaders let it happen. Like, that's not the fault of the officers ever. That's always the fault of the leadership. If there's an us versus them, that's our fault every single time. And so if we want that to change, we have to change it. It can't be something that we place on the officers, as it's not theirs to own.
Yeah, when I did your crisis negotiation, I did a piece of the training, and I made you all do an exercise, and you jumped right in, and that's very refreshing to see. Like, I love when the military, you get to, and you know this because you're married to a colonel, but you get to a certain level and they just pull themselves out of it and they forget where they came from. It reminds me of that movie, Jenny, or that's not the movie. God, the movie was awful. Don't watch that. But the song, Jenny from the Block, right? Mm-hmm. I got all the rocks I got, but I'm still Jenny from the, like, you need to know where you come from. That way you can maintain that humility and you know what's going on, because the last thing that you want in your position is to not be able to answer those questions.
Right.
Or to not even know who your staff is. And when you get to a level of captain, I mean, how many people do you are you responsible for?
I think I have about 60.
See? And you know every one of their names. I bet money on it.
I do. Yes. And I try to know their character and who they are as people and as officers. Now, I have to caveat that I also was the training commander. Like, I was their academy director for, a good 60, 70% of them, because they're young. We have a very young workforce, as most agencies do. So I've gotten to know them through their young career. But yeah, and there are times as a leader, especially as a command level leader, where you have to pull yourself away because you have to let the other leaders lead that are, that you outrank. And that's important too. And so, but typically I have to say, like, okay, stop. In my head, I'm like, all right, let them do it, because they can do it and they're extremely capable. But if I don't get to know them and what they're capable of and what their strengths are and their weaknesses are, when I get something in front of me that is really important, like a body camera footage or, an administrative investigation or a complaint, then I don't really have any perspective or anything to compare that one isolated behavior to. And that's not fair to them.
Right.
I'm sitting here listening to your leadership style, and I'm like, damn, I wish this was everywhere.
Does it?
Not just
Don't you want to just run out and be a police officer because she's a captain there? Like,
we're hiring. So
well,
amazing.
It's funny because we had this conversation off air on LinkedIn, and I'm like, I always wanted to be a cop, and my mom said I should have been a lawyer because I can negotiate anything and to make you see it my way. But with the cop, and I'm like, it's like, how fun would that be to be a police officer and have a gun and be able to have that authority. And be able to serve and protect, obviously, is the main reason. But, just on the occasion that you just happen to see that person that you love. And
I do got to plug your husband real quick. So he's Colonel, retired Air Force pilot, correct?
Yes.
Yes, because we're going to snag him in about a month, I think. I got to coordinate schedules, but I'm very excited to have him on too, because these two are just amazing. I've met them both in person, and they're just exceptional people. So
sometimes he'll say, "What's that, Captain?" And I'll say, "Do you know what we call retired colonels? Mr." So yes, I am the ranking person in the household. Anyway, no, he is amazing. He truly is amazing.
I love that. That's awesome. That's right. He's a mister.
He's incredible.
I let her know he's a mister. Yes. That is awesome.
We have leadership stuff all the time. Even when he still was the ranking member in the household, we bounce ideas off of each other. He has so much leadership experience, and I'm so thankful that I have that resource immediately available to me. And I think
that's like 20, 25 years of military leadership education at your fingertips. I mean, you can't buy that.
Right.
That's amazing.
And our styles are also extremely similar. So we also lead very similarly. And so he's never going to tell me, well, you should go in and scream at everybody and like walk out and slam the door, which is a style. It's not like the best style, but it is certainly a style. But I know that he's never going to give me that kind of advice. So I know I can say, I've got this situation. What do you like? What would you do? And I asked him that 2 days ago. I mean, it's a regular occurrence. And but
it's awesome that you have a plan and you have an idea of what you would do, but you're able to have that freedom to ask him or give him a case scenario and then see how he would handle it. And then you can discern which way you want to go. Like that's amazing. You're very blessed.
It's like a recipe. I like to cook, but I rarely like if he asked me to make something again, I'd be like, I don't know, because it's rarely the same way twice. I'll throw in a little of this, maybe a little extra of that. And so that's usually what I'll do with the advice. It's
Right.
his or it's mine or it's a hybrid. It's typically just a hybrid. It's my spin on, his idea, or it's, his spin on my idea sometimes at his job. So, yeah.
I love it. That's awesome. So now that you're a captain, do you have an idea about retirement? Are you looking, once you retire, maybe you're looking into this? Are you looking into be a chief? What's your plan?
I would love to be a chief. I think if the right opportunity presented itself to be a chief somewhere, I would take that opportunity. I have a 9-year-old.
We're always hiring in Florida, just saying.
Right. So moving is the real issue. I have a 9-year-old. His dad is here. I would always keep them close together. But I would like that. But I don't think anybody sets out to say, I'm going to be the chief of police someday. I think it's just sort of things that we kind of walk into, it just sort of like happens. I mean, it's great to have goals, but I don't know many chiefs that said, I'm going to be the chief. I think I know a lot of chiefs that became the chief because the right opportunity presented itself and it fit really well for them, for their family, for the community, certainly. And so if that opportunity presented itself, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not going to feel like a failure if I don't become a chief anywhere by any stretch. So I think I'm open to whatever opportunity feels like it fits my style, because this style certainly isn't, every police department has its own style, right? And that's not bashing any of them, but I wouldn't put a round peg in a square hole. I think it's a lot of who fits where and in what space. So,
well, you've had more than 20 years. I know you don't look like it, but you've had more than 20 years in the police department, correct?
Yes.
So have there been any, we talked about the positive, we give a funny story, but have there been any like situations that you can talk about that you feel comfortable that were, oh man, we could have done things a whole lot different in this situation?
Oh, sure.
Not that you messed up, but if you, looking, because I mean, that's what you do in policing is when events occur, they always do a 20/20, a hindsight view of a situation and go, okay, we've learned from this and now we're going to do this, this, and that. So is there any experiences that you've had that you can discuss with regard to that?
So we should always do a hindsight, a 20/20, a deep dive. We should always do an after action. Unfortunately, it doesn't.
I knew you had a name for it. I just couldn't remember what it was.
It doesn't occur as often as it probably ought to, unfortunately. Okay. There's a reason that firefighters are so effective. Gordon Graham, he's really big in risk management out in California. He does national and international police training for risk mitigation, and he runs Police One training academy. He's just really awesome, big in the police training world. But he said, there's a reason that firefighters are so effective. They live together in a fire station. They get called out on a call. Right. They all go out together. They do the fire thing. They get in their cool trucks and they go back to the fire station together. And then they sit down and they say, hey, Bob, you parked the truck too far this way. You could have parked this way and it would have been better that way. And hey, Chris, why did you do that? And they get to talk about every single call they go on.
Right.
Because that's the dynamic they have. Police officers get dispatched from wherever they are in their own separate districts to a call where they converge, do the policey thing, get in their cars, and then go separate ways. And then
on for the next call.
Yeah. And so by the time you get together at the end of the day or the next day in lineup, you've forgotten what you could have done better or what you wanted to tell your partner that they could have done better. Mm-hmm. we always did debriefs or after actions after a critical incident on my shift. So even when I was a shift sergeant, even if it wasn't something that would need like a SISM debrief, like
Right.
traumatic, if we had a shooting, if we had a use of force, I mean, anything that I considered to be critical, we would talk about it the next day in lineup. And I would say, ask me the leadership questions. If you have questions about the decision that I made, ask me why so I can explain it. Or
Right.
ask me why and I could say, well, maybe I could have done that better too. And we would sort of try and just debrief it for 10 minutes so that we could get better. But it doesn't happen as often as it ought to, unfortunately. And there have been so many in my career that, you know, we could do better. I remember stopping for a traffic accident on my way into work one night, and it was dusk, almost dark outside. And I put my lights on and I got out of the car and I made contact with the drivers, and the officers were en route to work the complaint. I was the sergeant at the time. I was en route to line up. And the firemen came and they blocked the road and they had the flares and they had their traffic vests on. And I was like, this is what safety looks like. I'm out here in a dark uniform in a dark roadway.
Mm-hmm.
And our policy says we have to put on our traffic vest, but it's something that we take for granted. And I went into lineup that night and I said, hey guys, let me tell you about the mistake I made on my way into work tonight, so you don't make the same mistake. First of all, our policy says that we have to. Secondly, why wouldn't we do that so that we are glowing in the middle of the road? And so even if there's so many countless like little things that we can do better just to keep ourselves safer. But yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of ways that just not forgetting the basics and remembering to do the things that keep us safe are important. Putting our phones down while we drive, you know, like don't crash the car. If you can't fit your car in a space, don't try to put it in the space. Just turn your lights on and leave it. Like I used to tell the recruits that, like, I know that you have to do this crazy, tricky driving in the academy, but realistically speaking, if you know your car isn't going to fit, just don't put it there. Just put the lights on and leave it in the road. I would rather you do that at least than try and cram it in a spot you know it can't fit into. So just little things, you know? Yeah. You wanted a big debrief, didn't you?
I did.
I know. I have a big one. I don't really want to discuss it. It had a different outcome than I had hoped for. So it was a crisis negotiation that, you know, just turned out differently than we had all hoped for. And it may have had the same outcome, and we probably could have done it 8 different ways. And I don't know which way.
If it's the one you're talking about, that would not have changed anything.
Right.
It didn't matter what direction you came at that one.
Right. And, you know, there's 30 different ways to do things. And the dynamic of policing is that you're dealing with another human being who you have absolutely no control over. And they can do things 30 different ways, and you don't know which one they're going to choose.
Correct.
So, you know, we try to after action our own actions in the hopes that we control ourselves and we choose the best. But ultimately, a lot of times the decision on what we do lies with someone that we have no control over.
Right. So what advice would you give somebody just coming, like deciding whether or not they were going to enter the police force today?
Wow, I have so much advice. Choose the right police department. You know, if you're going out and looking for a job, and I guess both the downfall and the beauty of the job market right now in policing is that there is a lot of availability. So there's not 100 candidates vying for one position. There's 100 positions and not enough candidates. So it's
do you think that's just because so many people retired? Or do you think there's a lot of reasons for it?
I think there are a lot of different reasons. I think we did see a big group of folks that retired. I think there was also a lot of negative media coverage. Police made a lot of missteps. You know, we're our own worst enemy. The minute we start on a good path, some bad cop somewhere does something bad and it's splashed all over the news pages. And we succeed and we fail as a profession together. I live in Virginia. I had nothing to do with anything that happened in Minneapolis or any other city, you know,
Right.
but we saw the ramifications for that. So we truly succeed and we truly fail all together, all of us. So I think there's a lot of different reasons that we have a lot of vacancies. I also think that people recognize how hard the job is, and wellness is so huge, and maybe our profession hasn't entirely caught up yet with that, and people want a job that they know is going to take care of them and keep them well. And this job has, you know, we have to try and take care of ourselves too, through therapy or, you know, exercise or horses, like you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. You know, it's not an easy office job where you just punch out and go home and forget everything that happened for the day. You know, a lot of the things that we see and do, they stay with you, and you got to have to unpack it somehow. Otherwise, you just carry it around forever. So I think
you got to have a mission after the mission. So you serve your community, and a lot of even military people, there's transitional trauma. So when you serve for 20, 25 years, you get your Virginia retirement, but there's no shift into, there's no skills bridge. There's no bridge for which you would be trained in another profession for 6 months, you know, in order for you to transition, because the policing, like some people stay 30 years, or you can be like Grady Judd and stay 50, but that's rare, right? Like not everybody stays for 50 years. But pointing out that you have to have a goal, a mission, something after this. So what does that look like for you? Because I know you have plans. I just want you to share.
I don't have, I'm not sure what it looks like. I think I have a lot of opportunities, which is a great thing to have. I do some work with the IACP, and I love that. I teach at ODU, and I love
the IACP.
The IACP is the International Association of Chiefs of Police.
Okay. What do you do for them?
So I do some consulting services for them in their professional services branch, where we'll do organizational assessments on effectiveness, shift level staffing assessments. They also do promotional services, but I also teach for them now. And so I teach their Women's Leadership Institute. That's a new certification that I have, and I'm really excited to do that because I love to teach, because then I get to travel around and I get to talk to other people in this profession. And then I get to make a difference in this profession on a bigger scale, or at least I hope I do. I don't know.
What is ODU for those people in Canada that don't know?
Old Dominion University. It's a university here in the state of Virginia. So
thank you.
It's my alma mater. I got my undergraduate degree from ODU. Go Monarchs. And so now I teach leadership and public safety, which is an undergraduate class there. So,
well, you sent me an email last week. I just thought that might be where you were going. So.
Well, Dr. J has been chatting with me about an opportunity to get another degree. So she wants me to go back to school again
Doctorate.
And spend thousands. Well, or just another master's degree, but to be a trauma counselor, I think, is definitely the direction that I would take with it. So it would be a state certification to do counseling. I would focus on first responders, military perhaps as well, but first responders. So I think I'm exploring the opportunity. We'll see.
Well, not to mention, if you get the doctorate, it's the same amount of time, and because you already have several masters. So it's the same amount of time, and you'll be able to teach at your alma maters. So that's what I was looking at.
So I think that is a non-certification track, though. So I wouldn't be able to actually be a practitioner, and I like that aspect of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But there are other ones that are licensure track, just saying. So.
And you're going to pay all my student loans. Is that what I heard?
No.
Yeah.
No. Well, I might inadvertently when I hire you, but we'll work on that.
So lots of opportunities. We'll see where I end up and what unfolds, but I'm excited. I like where I am right now. I love teaching. I'm very excited about the future of our world. I know that people have so many opinions about young people, but I read their papers and their posts, and they are brilliant. And I'm just very excited we're going to be just fine. The world has been around for a long time. They're not going to kill it. We're going to be all right. And I think they bring a lot of great ideas into the workforce. So I'm excited.
So what do you do for fun?
I exercise.
What?
What's wrong?
What is that?
It's how I manage my stress. My therapist says it's good for me, right? So we travel too. My husband and I, our family, we love to travel. Love
You
to
just get back from somewhere?
Barbados.
Yeah, just Barbados.
That's amazing.
It's a Monday.
Beautiful.
Whatever.
Yeah. We love to travel, love to see other cultures, love to eat other food, like to see how other people live and explore new places. So travel for fun. I also like to garden. A little dirt therapy, like to dig in the yard. I don't like to mow the grass. There's a difference. Let's be clear.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, yeah. I'm not going to mow the lawn. I'm terrible at weed eating, but I love to dig in the garden and plant things and so that's
Watch
fun.
them
It's
grow
therapeutic.
and eat them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have a whole herb garden. It's nice.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Have some dogs.
So,
Kids baseball. I like to sit at the baseball field and watch kids swing at the ball.
a lot of people think your profession is pretty scary. What would you say to those individuals?
I think every profession is scary some way, right? Like you can get robbed at the bank as a banker. If you're a truck driver or a race car driver, you can get in a crash. That was
Yeah. Or Amazon can hit your car.
I mean, look,
Or you're parked at your house. It's a thing.
there is a certain element of risk in every aspect of life, but we should not live our lives afraid of taking risks because the best things come out of taking a chance and taking risks. You know, if you rely on the training that you're given and you remember the training that you're given, 99% of the time, it'll keep you safe.
Mm-hmm.
So.
What was the biggest thing that you learned that kept you safe? Can you remember a time where you...
how to talk to people. Yes, 100%. I know that I'm seated and I probably look really tall and super buff, but I'm 5'3" and about 130 pounds. So I'm not a big
I would
person.
say you're super buff. I would not argue with that. You do look amazing. So
most people could throw me across a room, like if they really wanted to. A mad person could toss me. So I learned to communicate. I learned to talk to people. I learned to de-escalate. I learned to just keep it real and be humble. And I think that combination has kept me safe.
is there a statement or some type of approach when you have somebody who's really unruly? Perfect example is I went to Vegas during COVID and I went with a police officer, and she'll be on this episode too, and a Navy veteran. And this guy was just losing his mind. And she's British, right? So she walked up to him and she goes, "Oi!" And she goes, "Here's a sandwich," or however she says it. And the guy took the sandwich and walked away. But she's called the Nut Whisperer. Like that's her like name. And she's been on the news a couple times for it. Yeah, she's pretty exceptional. So my question to you is, do you have any approach that you use pretty consistently that works like a charm?
Help me understand.
Okay.
It works in leadership. It works in marriage. It works in Calls for service. You know, if you're asking someone to help you, it's pretty rare that somebody's going to tell you, no, I'm not going to help you.
Right.
If you're asking them to help you understand something about them, we know people love to talk about themselves. They do. I mean, it's just human nature.
Yeah.
So if you show up and you say, can you help me understand why you feel this way? Help me understand what's happening. Help me understand why you're so upset. I've said, help me understand why you thought that this was appropriate.
Right.
Yeah, I say that to my child, you know, sometimes I say it at work, unfortunately, but you know, because then you're asking, I don't want to answer so that I can take some kind of punitive, you know, action. I want to understand because that's going to guide my next steps.
Right. In what kind of context were you doing this or that?
Sure.
You know, as far as
help me
behaviors.
understand the situation. I'm just getting here. I can see that it is certainly intense. Help me understand what happened before I got here, so that I'll know how to best help you.
I love that. So, Dorothy, do you have any questions for Captain Rhone?
I'm just sitting here in like awe of everything. Number one, that a TV show made her what she is today, like got her on track to where she is today. Number one. Number two, Michelle, your leadership style is by far like, I can't even describe it as somebody.
Exceptional.
It's exceptional, 100%. And you know, I just wish a lot of leaders would even have like a third of what you just described tonight. So thank you for being who you are. And I wrote down your thing, help me to understand, like that. You're right. That can de-escalate everything, including a marriage situation for sure.
Yeah.
And especially your children. So I thank you for those tips, because like I said, like I wrote this down. I'm just like, wow. And thank you for your service. I'm just trying to think of any question that Dr. J has not asked. And it's really, she's asked a lot of all the amazing questions. So thank you, Dr. J. I'm not needed. I'm just here basically to produce it.
No, of course you're needed. It just, I've known Michelle for a long time, so it was easy for me to lead her into some of these avenues. And she did ask me, she's like, okay, what kind of questions are you going to ask me? And I'm like, I'll ask you where you lead me. Like, that's kind of how this goes. And that's what's cool about this being a podcast is, you know, the audience is going to collect information and they're going to be inspired by the people that we put on here. Last week, we had a 9/11 firefighter who served in two different, you know, military, and he served in the Air Force and the Navy. He served as a police officer in New York and, you know, both the 93 bombing and the 9/11 as a firefighter. So, you know, to kind of wrap your head around, like, not everyone dies doing this job, right? They serve their whole lives to, you know, make the world a better place. And that's kind of the goal. But I think it's amazing that a TV show led by a woman inspired you to realize that you could become whatever you wanted. You know, we get told that, you know, I'm a little older than you. But we get told that when we're younger, you can be anything you want to be. And it's like, I don't run. So
I'll never dunk a basketball.
Do what?
I'll never dunk a basketball.
Well, we could give you a little, you know, what do they call it? A trampoline, mini trampoline.
And I love the fact that you said, you know, everything that we do has a little bit of either adventure or risk to it. My mom would always say to me, I've been going wherever I wanted to go since early 20s. Growing up, we were, you know, we stayed at home. And when I was finally allowed to leave the nest, I did. And my mom, every time I would leave the house, because I've flown all over the United States when I was younger and things like that, she'd go, well, you know, why are you doing this? I'm afraid for your safety. And I'm like, do you think I'm really going to take any precautions? Number one. And number two, if I die, at least it's doing something that I love. So, you know, I can't sit here and be the small little girl you want me to be when there's more to life out there. And so,
well, and you can't predict what happens. I mean, you
No.
could be the most sheltered person in the whole world and there's a fire in your house, right?
Yeah.
So like anything can happen. So you might as well like look back on your life and go, I'm good.
That's right. Yep.
Like that's the goal. The
you just
goal is
pray,
to live a life
you
full of
say,
purpose.
not today, Satan, and you go on with your life.
Pretty much.
It was a risk that I was definitely willing to take. So
I love it. That's awesome.
I do have one question because, and I know you alluded to it a little bit earlier, Dr. J, but for those women out there, those young impressionable women that are trying to find out what career that they really want, and they've got one parent saying no, don't do it, and another parent saying yes, go for it, what would you say to them?
Ooh, that's tough. So you gotta live with those parents, or at least communicate with them. So I'm never gonna say like don't listen to your parents, because that looks different. Those consequences look different for everybody, right?
Yeah.
But we do see a lot where parents are nervous about their children becoming law enforcement officers, and we used to address that with a family night. So when our recruits were getting ready to graduate, we would have family night, and we would provide different types of books and resources. The chaplain would speak. We would show them the different types of training that their family member had been learning over the last 6 months, because we wanted to, at least try and help them feel less nervous, at least have the confidence that their loved one had been well trained to go handle whatever they might be confronted with. Ultimately, it's it's your life, and you have to make the choices that you can handle, and that you can live with. So, for me, that was, Mom, you prayed for Dad every night, and you managed to sleep and know that he was going to come home safe, and like we can just keep doing that for me. And she was okay with that.
Do you still do ride-alongs for like high school students who might be interested in venturing into the police force?
Not high school, but because you have to be 18, so we don't let children essentially ride with us. But if you are of age, you can come ride along. Yes, we do.
So do they apply? How do they connect with? Because I think that's an opportunity for them to see what the job entails.
Of course.
Because a lot of it is the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
And if the parents don't understand, go for a ride along.
We have a youth academy too, so they could do that. I mean, if they're really interested, if they want to spend more than 4 to 12 hours checking it out, we have a youth academy that they could do. But otherwise, there is a form. I don't know if it's on our website or not, but a lot of agencies, if you call the administrative line, that's advertised on any agency's webpage, there is a form that person on the other line could email you, and they could fill it out, and they run a background check, to make sure that you're not a felon or anything. And then you got to sign a waiver, because there's an element of risk there. I'm sure the attorneys took a look at the form. So and then you can choose what shift you want to ride with and for how long. Yeah,
I love that. That is good. That way you can make up your mind, because it sounds great. It sounds great, but then if you get admitted
on the job training, so we could go, this is not like I did that when I was trying to search for a career once upon a time. I think it was my third career. I don't remember, but I went and I assisted a physical therapist, and I'm like, oh, hell no, this is not anything I want to do. And I have physical therapist friends who are just exceptional human beings. I want nothing to do with what they do. Like it was the fastest way for me to figure out, nope. Right. So if we had an opportunity to shadow people, I mean, I do that with residents. I have them come on my calls, and they get to watch me counsel, and they're like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. Or no, her style is not at all like mine. Like, that's okay too, You can nod along. It's fine. It's just not me. Right. But they get to see like the dynamic of what it looks like, because residents, as far as mental health counseling, they always make it look more difficult than it really is.
Mm.
You know, it's a conversation. It's okay.
Yeah. I think the police academies can be like that. It can be like the scenarios that you're given are often way harder than any shift.
Extreme.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they have to be, because we want to make sure that, that the recruit is prepared for something extreme, but 99% of the calls that we go on just aren't that way.
And you hear
and
the horror
also
stories about basic training too. It's the same way. Everybody's
Right.
terrified of basic training, and it's like, you get through it. It's not as bad as you think it is.
It really serves to highlight their communication skills as well, or their communication abilities, if there aren't any skills.
Yeah, not every day is training day.
Right.
That was a good movie, but that's a little freaky.
Yeah.
See, look at her face. She's like, we're not like that.
No. It's a terrible example of policing. Yeah.
I think it's a great way to bring recruiting up.
Yeah.
Right? Great way to bring it up. My opinion.
We don't want the people though that like training, that are looking for the training day experience. They can stay on the sidelines.
No, I meant like having just like a ride along to see if that's what they want to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
so
100%.
I'm a huge movie buff. So my question to you is, I have a lot of police officer friends, and they really stay away from any police officer movies. Like, we don't watch, as counselors, we don't like to watch movies with counselors in them, because we like analyze this and analyze that. I would choke Billy Crystal out, and I know that's probably not right, but like some of the stuff he says, I'm like, why did you just say that? So with regard to like police movies, is there anything that you think aligns with what you do versus Training Day is not what you do?
No.
Beverly Hills Cop. Hello. That's one of the classics.
It's a fantastic movie. I love that movie. Does not align. No.
The other guys? No.
No.
Lethal Weapon.
I mean, the first 48 is, the most realistic police show, in my opinion. But
okay.
Yeah, no.
I just figured I'd ask you, because I love asking police officers that question, because they're all like, they all suck.
They do. And I pick them apart, and that makes it not fun for the person that I'm watching with, which is usually unfortunately, like my husband, who's sitting there like, I'm just trying to watch the program. Would you stop? Like, well, that's terrible. Why'd they say that to that person? You can't do that. That's illegal. And he said, Michelle, it's a TV show. It's a TV show. And they'll just change the channel because
well, I'm sure he's got the same thing. He's an Air Force pilot, so he's gonna, shows like Maverick. He's probably gonna come out of his
loves
chair.
that show. Loves
really.
The movie. We were there in the theater. Top Gun. He had it playing on the TV on the whatever channel it was on, FX or whatever, the other day. Yeah,
really. He's okay with those.
Yeah, I think it's the nostalgia for him, though. Honestly.
Okay. But he doesn't tear it apart as far as like, those buttons aren't there, they didn't do this.
Oh yeah, he'll do that, but not in the moment of the movie. He's just like intently watching the excitement of the movie. I will say I do love Olivia Benson. Okay. I truly do.
She's a really good character.
She is, and she's also a really incredible actress. While the things that happen on that show may not always be the most realistic, I think she plays a realistic police officer and leader. Does that make sense? Like the way that she communicates and carries herself, I think is pretty realistic.
Well, now I have to watch Law and Order SVU because I don't remember how she does that.
It's still on. She's a captain.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I watch it and I'm like, I want to do that. Why don't our captains don't get to do all that fun stuff? I don't know what they have going on up there in the NYPD, but we don't get to do those things. Maybe it's just TV.
I don't think she would really either. I
No,
think it's
probably
in
not.
this TV show.
Oh, that's awesome because I used to watch that show, and Blue Bloods was my favorite, along with what's that one with LL Cool J? Oh, it's a detective one.
Was it NCIS?
Yes, NCIS. Thank you.
Oh,
Los Angeles, I think, is the one he's on.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because now they're in Hawaii or Vegas or something. They're everywhere.
I like those shows. I used to really love CSI.
Yeah.
Now, because I would
David,
geek out
I
on
think
the
it's
science.
Carradine.
What's that?
David Carrot. No, it wasn't David Carradine. David something. The redhead guy who's like, it was the, he
Yeah,
reminds me
Horatio.
of the guy from Clue. It's like it was in the dining room with the candelabra by Mr. Mustard, you know, like every show, that's what he reminded me of.
I know that it wasn't realistic, but the science, I would, kind of nerd out on the science of it. And that part was always really fun.
Love it.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, I always let Dorothy open the show and close the show because she's really, really good at it. 'Cause she's got like 9 shows
I only have 3 so far.
now. Right now.
Right now. Well,
Yeah,
I
she's on
have
Roku. We're on
I-
TV.
Yes,
Like,
this will eventually go on Roku in a week or 2. Just give me some time. So you'll be famous, Captain. I mean, you're already famous. You're already famous with the serving that you do and the leadership that you have, because I'm telling you, this is the first time I've met you, and I'm just like, wow. I'm just like, this woman's amazing. So thank you for what you do. You make it seem so flawless, and seriously, if I was 20 years younger, I would join the academy, but I'm 47 and
thank you
not
for
going to
saying
start
yes.
now.
What's that?
Well, there's a lot of females that I talk to that do these amazing things, and they're just not interested in sharing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know if it's humility or time or whatever, but I just want to thank you for being on the show. I appreciate you showing the capability, you know.
Mm-hmm. And if anybody wanted to contact you, I know I have your website going across the bottom of the screen. But if anybody wanted to connect with you to find out more about your leadership, and can they just go to your website, or
what is your website?
So my husband and I have a leadership consulting company.
Wow.
We don't do too much with it right now. He did a lot with it when he first retired from the military. So he would travel all over and do training and talks and all kinds of stuff. We don't do too much with it right now. But I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. They can certainly email me. I'm
so what do you do as
that.
far as leadership consulting? Like, what does that look like?
So any leadership training or leadership development for any level of leadership, really. John did a lot of stuff with executive leaders in the military, like high-level leaders in the military, mostly the Air Force, because that's the world that he worked in for a very long time. But those are the types of things that we have. We have some training curriculum for leadership development. So,
well, we may just need to have him on next week. What do you think, Dorothy?
whatever we need to do. I'm up for anything.
Would be cool.
I think yes, that would be cool.
He's a cool dude. I'm biased, but he's super cool.
I'm biased because he's Air Force. And he's got to be super cool because he's married to you, and you're very cool. So,
well, I would say yes, only for the leadership style, because from just what I'm hearing from Captain Michelle here, I'm just like, listen, anybody that has a company should be hiring these people like you and your husband to do effective leadership, not like even in the civilian world. Could you freaking imagine this going into the civilian world? Like the world as we know it would change. Like seriously. Just saying. Anyways.
I tell the undergraduate kids or students, because they're not all kids, but the students that, the principles of leadership remain the same. They really do. they change a little bit in public safety or in the military just because of the dynamic of the workforce, but the principles are the same. They really are. And the styles transfer very easily into many different settings. So
absolutely. Well, we want to honor your time. So thank you very much to our guests that joined us tonight. And for those of you that are on the replay, we thank you. And thank you so much, Captain Michelle, for being on the show tonight. As always, it's absolutely a pleasure to have you here, an honor to have you here. And if you say you travel, you'll have to come to Canada and, we'll show you the sites here. And we have a golf tournament coming up in August. So if you're golf, you and your husband can come to that. Nope.
We don't. I'll drive the cart if you would like.
Well, I don't know. If she gets her doctorate, she's going to have to start golfing. Just saying. So I'm just teasing you. That's the thing. Yeah. They pick on doctors all the time. They're like, you got to golf. You have a doctorate. It's like, what? How does 1 + 1 = 12?
It's funny because it's it's my family golf tournament in honor of my dad, and everybody's like, well, you have to golf. I'm like, I don't golf. But I end up every year doing it. I suck at it, but he loved it. So that's why I do it. Raise money for cancer patients. So that's the main thing. So yeah, anyways, shameless plug there for that event, but that's okay. Check out Captain's website there and get her in front of your leadership is all I've got to say. With that, guys, have an amazing evening, and same time, same channel next week. Bye for now.